us listen to the voices which call out, and let us touch the hurt and pain of Georgians and try to make a difference.
Speaker David Ralston takes lead and successfully pushes through legislation he calls a defining issue that will touch the lives of many Georgians, the expansive mental health parity bill. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 25 of the legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry. In this show, we will have much more on the mental health parity bill. The two lawmakers who guided the bipartisan legislation through committee hearings and substitutions are here. Representatives Todd Jones and Mary Margaret Oliver will break down the major elements of the bill. They'll talk about the major portions of the bill that focus on getting insurers to treat mental health like physical health, plus changes to the definition of involuntary treatment, options for loan forgiveness for mental health professionals, strategies for law enforcement, the courts, and corrections, and plus more. All of it in an effort to help individuals and families when a mental health crisis erupts. But first, we head to the Capitol, where Capitol correspondent Brenda Waters gives us a wrap-up of that bill and what else happened at the Capitol today. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, Donna. A bill close to Speaker Ralston's heart passed in the House today, the Mental Health Parity Act. House Bill 1013 passed 169 to 3, and the measure got a round of applause and a standing ovation.
At the end of the day, this is not about political party. It's not about geography, income level, race, gender, or all the things that supposedly divide us. This is about our regard for what most of us have been taught all our lives and what is foundational to most of us and our view of our place as it relates to our fellow man.
Representative Todd Jones presented the bill. He told reporters after the vote what the measure is designed to do.
First and foremost, parity. We're going to treat mental illness the same way that we treat physical illness in this state if this bill goes through. The second thing we're going to do is ensure that the money is spent on patient care and not on administrative costs, and that's where the medical loss ratio comes in. The third thing we're going to do is make sure we build the right workforce. We're going to build it, we're going to retain it, and we're going to make sure that Georgia is a great place to be.
I think this touches more families than we can ever even imagine. And you've heard some of the people allude to that. So I just wanted to come and say that this is a great piece of legislation.
Only 3 representatives voted against the bill.
It's the kind of measure I think is going to make a real difference in the lives of many, many Georgians. And it was a transformative, historic measure. We're going to deliver on our commitment to have a quality mental health care system here in Georgia. And I look forward to this being only the first step along that path.
2 other health bills that passed in the House, HB 1304 and 1042. Now, both are dealing with primary care in medical facilities. And in the Senate, SB 393 was introduced to prohibit social media platforms from censoring speech and contrary viewpoints.
We are recognizing what Justice Breyer stated in a Supreme Court opinion, that the social media is the 21st century public square. And what we are stating here is that you cannot be discriminated against for your viewpoint, for your gender, for your age, and other things that we'll get to in just a second in this 21st century public square.
Democrats question the need for this bill since there's already federal law that deals with some of these issues.
Isn't it true that federal law covers this? And basically, isn't it true, basically what you're saying is you're going to overrule federal law?
No, sir, federal law does not cover, well, federal law does cover my ability to express my viewpoint, but what we've seen is numerous examples of social media companies violating the rights of those people to express those opinions online.
What I have issues with respect to this bill is that I do think it's unconstitutional, and I think it's preempted by federal law. I think that from a very serious place, this needs to be dealt with at the federal level. Section 230 needs to be repealed.
Senator Elena Parent asked why social media is any different from a newspaper printing or declining to print an op-ed.
Facebook is arguing vociferously in court that they can censor content under 230 precisely because they're not publishers. So Facebook themselves are drawing a line between the rights of publisher, the liability protection that they would have because they're saying they're not a publisher. So we fall under 230, and you cannot sue us because somebody posts lewd material because of 230. However, we also can moderate the content in the way we wish because we have a First Amendment right to do so. And those two things are in conflict with each other legally.
That bill passed 33 to 21. Now, the Senate also passed SB 381, which would increase mandatory punishments related to pimping and pandering convictions with a minimum sentence of 10 years for anyone offering or having sexual interactions with a minor. Now, for years, the slogan for Coca-Cola was, "Have a Coke and a smile." But there were no smiles in the House today for the soft drink giant.
A few years ago, I stood in this very spot and I took up for a certain soft drink company who has their corporate headquarters here in Georgia the week of the Super Bowl. This same company has no problem speaking out publicly about political issues. However, they have remained strangely silent when it comes to the issue of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We've not heard a word from them.
Coca-Cola is a politically savvy company. They know better than this. And when many other companies have withdrawn and pulled out from doing business in Russia, I'm at a loss to understand why Coca-Cola, which is our corporate citizen here in this city, is still over there trying to make money under this bloodthirsty regime.
Now, since this morning, Coca-Cola has suspended its business in Russia. That's my Capitol Report. But one more thing before I go. It's International Women's Day, a day for extraordinary women like you, Donna.
Oh, thank you. Like you, Brenda. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda.
All right.
We're going to spend the rest of the show breaking down the massive mental health parity legislation that House Speaker Ralston says impacts every family in Georgia in one way or another. Ralston is the main sponsor, but joining us are the two lawmakers he chose to shepherd the bill through the floor of the House. Democratic Representative Mary Margaret Oliver of Decatur and Republican Representative Todd Jones of South Forsyth. Welcome to Lawmakers, and thank you both for staying the rest of the show. Before we get started, I want to talk about some of the sections of this nearly 80-page bill, and we're going to look at today in depth. Among the sections, mental health parity, which involves putting mental health issues on the same level in the health system with physical health issues. Also, workforce and system development, focusing on those who work in mental health. Involuntary commitment and what that might mean. Courts and corrections both currently play a major role in the mental health system. And there's an element in the bill that involves child and adolescent behavioral development issues. And I want to talk about what the Speaker Ralston talked about today with both of you first, and he touched on it, and he talked about how it touches everyone personally. And you both have been really, really open in these hearings, talking about how it's touched you personally. So I'd like you to briefly talk about that. And your wife even came to one of the hearings and spoke. It really touches your family personally. If you don't mind talking about that.
No, of course.
And thanks for being here, too.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. And Chairman Oliver and I, we have shepherded this bill on behalf of the Speaker. And we decided as a family, my wife and I, Tracy, that when the Speaker asked us to do this, to pick it up, we said, we got to go all in. And all in meant we felt as if there needed to be a combination between great policy but also why it touches every family. And we had, in fact, been touched. I have 4 children, and my oldest son, Justin, he was diagnosed about 8 years ago with severe mental illness and was in psychosis for 6 years and just recently came out of it. And we had such trials and tribulations, and to summarize it, we've been in the system and out of the system 31 times and across 4 states just in that 8-year period. So as my wife said in testimony in committee, about 4 times a year, 3 times a year, we were literally going in and out of hospitals, outpatient treatment, step-down facilities, you name it. So we knew the underbelly of this system, and we knew, I hate to say everything that needed to be fixed, but how about this? We saw all the bad. We didn't see a lot of good. And we know there's a lot of people in the system that are working hard, but we know that they needed help. And that's where I think this bill is going to work for us.
Yeah, I really thank you for bringing that on a personal level and telling us your personal story. I know that was tough. Your wife was amazing in committee talking about it. And I think it helps us all understand where we fit into this whole issue of mental health in Georgia. So Representative Oliver, you work as a court conservator, right, for people?
I have for 25 years been appointed by probate courts to serve as conservator for mentally ill, incapacitated adults. So just in a very pragmatic way, I have been in part of the lives of many, many different incapacitated adults, almost all of whom are successfully able to live independently. A little bit of money, a little bit of support, sometimes a loving family who cannot deal with the property or the money issues, but is still a loving family to a mentally ill adult. Sometimes there's no one there to help a mentally ill adult, and a caseworker, a competent caseworker. Very few mentally ill people really are violent. It's a small percentage that are violent or committing crimes. Most can be served economically better and certainly better for their sense of personal freedom and a real life independently. And I've been involved in those lives. But mental illness is personal to everybody. The number of suicide funerals I have gone to in recent years I don't need proof that it's going up and that it's traumatizing our society. The increase of suicide, particularly among young people. I was at a suicide funeral last month. Totally successful professional, top of his life, beautiful family, lovely, successful children, committed suicide. These are the things that I think every member of the General Assembly is experiencing from their constituents. We know that the pandemic has extra trauma and extra injury, particularly to children.
Yeah, and it's helped us understand it a little bit more, and I think it's helped take away some of the stigma, which has probably helped as you've gone through all of this with the bill. And Representative Jones, let's talk about the major lift, and that has to do with Parity, which would require insurers to pay the mental health care in the same way physical health care. Explain that to us.
Yeah, the easiest way to talk about it really does come down to physical health and mental health are equal. And when you think about it, we don't say to a cancer patient, well, you can only see your oncologist 12 times this year. Of course not. We're not going to say to someone, well, you're in stage 3 cancer and we're going to stop your chemo at round 2 instead of going to round 3. We do that today most of the time in mental health. We have to stop that. If you need to see your mental health professional 24 times, you should be allowed to do that. If we need to have 3 or 4 cycles, you should be able to do that. The bill goes even further into substance abuse and talks about how it is that we can address substance abuse in the exact same way without those limitations. So that's what Parity is about. It's about making physical and mental health and treating them the same.
And making sure insurers understand that, because that's when people really feel frustrated by the system when they have to try to pay for these things.
As a matter of fact, the bill covers private and public, and it requires a report each year. So we're going to see the Office of the Insurance Commissioner be able to really give us that type of information to the General Assembly.
Okay. Representative Oliver, I want to talk about the workforce and system development piece of this. And when we talk about the people who work in mental health, an important piece, right?
We're expanding the opportunity to have education loans canceled for certain treatment professionals beyond psychiatrists, beyond doctors. They're in the rural areas and in urban underserved areas. We need personnel who can provide mental health services. And there's a wide variety of folks that have licenses or competent to do that. We believe that the benefit of having a loan canceled, education loan canceled, if someone is willing to go to an underserved area, is willing to treat folks that aren't insured and is willing to accept Medicaid, Medicare, public benefits, that's going to expand the opportunities for people to get help where they need to get help.
Yeah, it's good to know. And before we go any further, I want to mention the Mental Health Commission that you were both a part of, chaired by former Representative Kevin Tanner. That commission helped shape this bill. It was comprised of people from a variety of different professions affected by mental health issues. Some of them spoke at the hearings, and here's just what Superior Court Judge Brian Amaro of the Flint Circuit had to say.
Judges are not doctors, and jails are not hospitals. This package of reforms will reduce hospitalization, reduce arrests, reduce incarceration, and provide more support for some of our most vulnerable citizens.
A very important piece of it, and that gets in a little bit into this whole involuntary commitment issue. What changes with this bill? And well, first, some people don't understand what involuntary commitment means.
We have civil liberties. We cannot be detained without a process of a court order. For folks who are mentally ill, visibly in the public, in a situation where they are harming themselves, will harm themselves, threatening to harm themselves, we have an opportunity under a statute to do an evaluation and to take them into custody for a minimum of 48 hours for the purpose of an evaluation. There's a national conversation going on based on constitutional principles of what's the standard by taking somebody into custody for 48 hours. The word now is imminent harm and danger to himself. And we are, based on national conversations and new case law standards, changing that to say still serious harm to one another, to themselves or to somebody else, serious threats, but with a reasonable expectation that the harm is going to continue unless they're taken into custody. They are non-compliant, they're refusing treatment, they are acting in a way that is harming themselves, but the word imminent is going to be removed from the statute. I use the example of the homeless guy who is not dressed for cold weather, in the open, it's 26 degrees and he's going to sleep on the bench without a blanket. Is he in imminent harm, or does it have to be 20 degrees, or it has to be, and if it's 45 degrees, is he fine? We have to have a more reasonable standard for law enforcement, primarily law enforcement, although we have as part of the bill new opportunities for law enforcement with co-responder mental health professionals, that's a part of our bill, to make a proper evaluation. What is a dangerous situation where a person will not be compliant and will not submit to treatment, where we have a legal authority to take them into custody for 48 hours.
Just changing that language makes a big difference. There's so much to cover on this, and we're just scratching the surface, so we're going to keep you around here. Pause for a break, and when we come back, our guests will take a look at the areas of local mental health response teams, drug abuse treatment, and help for children and adolescents with behavioral mental health issues. You're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. Once again, Representatives Todd Jones and Mary Margaret Oliver are here as we continue to break down elements of the large mental health parity bill that passed in the House today, 169-3. So next, I want to hear from another member of the commission, the police chief for the city of Lagrange. Let's hear what he had to say today.
Right now, police respond and oftentimes have to coax an individual into the ambulance or wait until there's an act of violence or property destruction or some sort of disorder before they can take him into custody.
So the idea that committing a felony is today is a means for a person to get help is shocking for some people. But you've even had to deal with that personally. The way things go with the officers, they can't do anything until the person commits a felony?
Yeah, I wish we could take that lighthearted, but we can't. That's exactly correct. Nothing can happen unless they actually witness the felony. They have to witness it. And that's what's interesting. Yeah, in terms of bringing them in. So just really quick, my son, he's over 18. He's in a treatment facility. He's not technically under arrest, so he was allowed to AMA, leave against medical advice. He leaves. We immediately know what's going to happen. He's going to go off his meds. We know that he's going to go back into psychosis, and we know basically it's going to be a downward spiral into the vortex. Ultimately, we called up someone who we trust dearly, and we said, what do we need to do? And they said, Todd, you need to get him to commit a felony. You can only imagine his mother and I, excuse me? We don't commit felonies. That's not what we do. Well, that's the only way you're going to get him real help, because now we can get him where we need to get him, and we can have the long-term help that he needs. Believe it or not, today, the pathway to long-term residential help is primarily through our criminal justice system. That's why the DOC, the Department of Corrections, is the #1 provider of mental health in our state and nearly every other state. So with our bill, knock wood, we get it through the Senate, you're going to see a path that does not require you to actually commit a felony in order to get the help that you need.
And so that's what the bill calls for, taking that element out of things.
Yeah, we're going to take the element out of please don't become a criminal. We'd rather help you up front. We'd rather focus on wellness than focus on the chronic issue.
It's shocking. It's shocking to think that that's part of it. I want to keep going through this. So Representative Oliver, I want to continue where we left off and talk a little bit about the idea of trying to keep the mentally ill out of jail. Can you talk about what the bill offers in terms of that? Because, you just mentioned how that's a major part of the population in jails and prisons.
The cycling through emergency rooms, the cycling through jails is clogging up our system, is taking law enforcement away from more perhaps relevant jobs to some of us. Our evaluation and opportunity to create some money, some source of funds for co-responder programs that are popping up all over. All of Forsyth County has a co-responder program, meaning that the police go out with a trained mental health professional. In my district, city of Brookhaven is experimenting. Across Georgia, and this comes out of the mental health courts, and it comes out of the criminal justice reform system, and it comes out of the Commission for Behavioral Reform and Innovation that I've been on for 2 years now. We need to have different models of dealing with people in the public, in their home, who are violent, who are in a psychotic state, without taking them to jail. We are developing over Georgia, and we have to do it at a greater pace, crisis units. Where can you take somebody who is in crisis and have them there a number 3, 5, 10 days? We have about 10 crisis units across Georgia now, only, I think, 3 for children. We have to do more expansion of crisis intervention by trained professionals. Crisis detention for folks for a short period of time can be stabilized and become more able to make some decisions for themselves. Our system has to change, and House Bill 1013 is going to help that change come about.
I love that. And let's talk about HB 1013, the fact that it's called 1013. In mental health circles, 1013 means something. Explain what that is.
Yeah, in Georgia, it's a verb, it's a noun, it's an adjective, but ultimately, when someone says we need a 1013, it typically means that law enforcement needs a medical professional to assess, and then if the assessment is such that they are a danger to themselves or to society, then they're going to be involuntarily held for a 48-hour period based on a judge's order.
Now, I had you bring that up because I spoke earlier to Representative Shelley Hutchinson, who is a licensed clinical social worker, and she is happy about the bill. She's happy about the mental health bill, but wishes it included something dealing with transporting people who are having a mental health emergency. Let's hear from her.
If I have to 1013 someone as a clinician, if they're violent, which the only way I can do that is if they're homicidal or suicidal, and if they're violent, it's not going to be safe for that person to get in my car. It's not safe for that person to get in an ambulance because ambulance staff is not equipped to deal with mental health psychosis. So the big question is who will do the transport? Because whoever does, and right now we rely on law enforcement.
So, Representative Oliver, the transportation piece is something you couldn't get into the bill.
We have a variety of ways we're dealing with the transport issue because it's been a significant part of our discussions, both in the commission and in our hearings, with 3 public hearings, and we had a lot of discussion. The sheriffs feel burdened. They are statutorily required to do the transports, and we have been focusing on the subsequent transport. If a person is, by law enforcement, taken to an emergency room or a crisis center, and there's a treatment plan afterwards, is the law enforcement the best transport facility for subsequent transports? We have across Georgia, again, these are arising based on local issues, local leadership, and local needs, a variety of different other transportation systems that are being implemented. Hospitals and ERs and crisis units are developing different ways for folks who aren't violent, who folks have been stabilized. It's a significant part of a bill. Subsequent transports are still law enforcement required to do, but we've put in the bill opportunities for some funding, for some transport opportunities by the private sector, specialized ambulance units. And we also are developing through the co-responder program I talked about and the workforce development, different kind of ways that we move people from a psychotic state in the public or at home to a crisis facility and into a treatment that is going to be more effective, more coordinated.
Yeah, I understand that you couldn't get it all in, but this is still a work in progress. You know, this is just, it's massive, but there's still more to do. Representative Jones, the bill passed 169-3, and I have to say, of those who voted against it, was one of them, Representative Philip Singleton, and he is worried about the increase in health care costs that it might happen. Do you think? Explain how you feel about that.
Sure. When you look at what other states have done in terms of them bringing in parity, them bringing in MLR requirements, there's basically a medical loss ratio. What we have seen empirically is you may see a little bit of a bump up initially. However, once the insurance companies and the care becomes coordinated, as Chairman Oliver mentioned, you start to see more of a focus on wellness. And what I'm going to say is the front of the funnel versus the chronic end. That now starts to decrease the cost to both our public and our private insurance companies. Hence, we should be able to see the insurance rates start to normalize again and get back to where we were in 2022. We don't expect a big jump.
There's so much to this. We're barely scratching the surface. I do want to get to something so people understand how bad this problem is. And Georgia ranking the bottom, near the bottom of 50 states in mental health. Statistics show that in 78 of Georgia's county, there's no licensed psychologist. There is, in 53 counties, there is no licensed social worker. 45 counties, there is no licensed psychologist or social worker. It's a major problem. You know, do you feel that this bill is at least cracking that a little bit?
I think we're going to make progress with this bill. I feel confident that progress is on the way. Workforce issues are important in every industry post-pandemic right now. They're particularly important in the medical field and in the psychological services and variety of new mental health specialists we're training and licensing and supervising and forgiving their education loans when appropriate. I think we're making good progress.
Okay, the big lift now is you take it to the Senate. You feeling good about it?
I feel very good.
All right, then. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the show. A lot to talk about. We may talk about it later as things get moving. Also, we just want you to know you can join the conversation with us on Twitter at #GPB News. And we will see you tomorrow when we'll get a chance to talk to you a little bit more on Legislative Day 26. Have a good night.